What is your understanding of unconscious bias?
I guess when I think of bias, I think of prejudice against a group of people or maybe cultures. And I guess unconscious bias is when you're not aware that you're doing that. I think I listened to a podcast once and it was about this guy who had adopted a black child or whatnot. And I think he must have seen a black man by himself on the street who potentially could have been the father of his daughter, and he just locked his car. He didn't even think about it. He locked his car, and then he saw the man pick up his own child, and then he clocked himself. He was like, "Right, I have a black child," and I just assumed that man, who's just in normal clothes, whatever, was in some way dangerous or a threat to me. And then he realised he'd been doing that his whole life, but didn't consider himself racist or somebody who carried those things. So I guess that's my idea, or what I know of unconscious bias. What about you?
Yeah, that exact same thing. And I suppose it bleeds into class, race, gender,
Religion,
yeah,
background.
all of those things. So that exact same scenario that you explained, but across all of those other areas. And it being so ingrained in your psyche that you're just so unaware that you're even being prejudiced or bias. And then how does this impact you in the community that you represent?
As a black queer woman, well, even like a genderqueer person, it affects me every day and everything all the time. I don't know. I don't even know how to break that down. From my local corner shop, or always following me around the store, to people assuming men mansplaining to me because they assume I might not know something in whatever field I'm working in, to people making assumptions about my background or what I'm into because of the way I look. I think there's a lot of stereotypes assigned to a body like mine, and because there is very little or no representation of people like myself, unconscious biases in everybody, I guess. And I think I have it towards, I did for a very long time, towards differently abled people, trans folk. Still something you just have to unlearn.
Yeah. I feel like unconscious bias is very physical, and I am also a queer black woman, but the unconscious bias I will receive is so different to the way that you would receive it, purely based on appearance, and I think that's really interesting. But yes, it totally affects me in my day to day, and also because we are working so closely with the community that we do work with, that we literally create spaces so that people are able to take a breather from that unconscious bias experience just in life.
I would say the things I was just thinking of, I would say a lot of those things are quite conscious. Again, I guess it's a fine line.
Yeah.
Between people's consciousness.
Yeah. But then I suppose it's interesting because the unconscious bias, that conscious bias projected on you by other people, then becomes internalized unconscious bias within yourself, which makes you question your own movements and identity and policing yourself without even realizing it, because you're so used to that behaviour.
It takes a toll.
Yeah.
You start moulding yourself in a way that makes it easier to navigate those unconscious biases or conscious ones. I guess you take on a new shape when you're in public.
Yeah. And what work are you doing to challenge people's unconscious bias?
What work am I doing? I was like, what am I? I think I'm explicitly always saying to people that unconscious bias exists, no matter if you want to be a good person or not. Like, it's very, very rare that you would have somehow, like, escaped unconscious bias in any, like, growing up in the Western world, or just in the world in general, with all the stigmas we have in regards to women, sexuality, age, gender, all the lies that we've been fed at this stage. I think my role in what I do is just explicitly saying that it exists, it is happening, it's apparent, it's infecting everyone, from men to women to everybody, because it's like it's stopping us from experiencing each other as individuals. So I think it's just by talking about it and creating conversation, and also creating spaces where minorities or oppressed people don't have to, like you said, face unconscious bias, and by being alone or in separatist spaces can even acknowledge how it's affecting them and how to affect change in their own lives.
I think you summed that up very well.